Welcome to Office Hours, where we attempt to answer your questions 7 days a week. Every single day, 365 days, sometimes 366 when we're feeling crazy a year. We answer your questions. So if you've got questions, go ahead and throw them in. You can use Mukana if you know where that is. If you don't know where that is, you can go to officehours.global/join, and you'll start getting emails that have links to Discord and Mukana and all kinds of other things. And so you can jump in there. You can ask questions. You can vote on the questions. You can chat about the questions. If you don't have that, of course, you can use askofficehours.global. Just go to askofficehours.global. You can ask those questions 24/7. And then what we do is the next day, if it's one question at a time and it's well-formed, we will throw it into the show the next day. So definitely you can ask those questions during the show, or if you're watching this after the show, you can ask them then. All right, let's go ahead and jump into those questions. Alex, what do we have?
First question comes from Dave Burke in Alexandria, Virginia. My company has locked down our work MacBooks, so we can't really use them for personal things. Would a Mac Mini at home available to remote into be a good alternative to carrying a personal laptop? If so, what software/config do you recommend?
Go ahead, Alex.
Yeah, Mac Mini actually would be a great choice, depending on what you're needing it for. If it's just going to be, well, actually, I will say even the base model M2 Mac Mini now, you can get, actually even through Apple, their certified refurbished program, you can get a couple $100 off usually on those. They're great value for money. I think they're incredibly well engineered. Even, I've got a base Mac Mini here with only 8 gigs of RAM, and I edit on DaVinci Resolve all the time. I'm not working with really big RAW or 4K files, but for just editing podcasts, 1080p stuff that comes off my ATEM ISO recordings, it's incredibly smooth. I do wish I had the capability to add an additional monitor. So one thing you should know about the M2 is that you can only drive 2 external monitors. You need the Pro chip if you want to have 3, so just be aware of that. But the Mac Mini is a great solution. It's quiet, cool, and doesn't take up very much footprint.
Yeah, it just depends on how much time you think you're going to be away. So I think that you could use things like AnyDesk to get back to it. You might want to have an iPad somewhere because you have to still get back to it. So I don't think that if your computer's locked down at work, you're probably not going to be able to get back to it there. so they're probably going to be, if they're going to be that way about your Mac, they're probably going to be that way about everything else. So I think that that'll be a little bit problematic, and I probably wouldn't try to do it from work if they're that touchy about what's going on there. So anyway, I would I think that you potentially could get away with a Mac Mini and an iPad, although my temptation would be to go ahead and just get a small laptop, if you're going to be traveling around a lot. But if you're going to be at home and you think most of your work is going to be there, maybe an iPad that you can use when you're on the road, and the Mac Mini does the real work when you're at home and just gives you an excuse when you're on the road not to do too much. And you can get a lot done with the new iPads are pretty slick as far as that goes. So think about that. I think trying to remote in from work, if they're already locking your computer down, trying to remote in from work may raise eyebrows. Next question.
Next question is from Paul Wallace in Austin, Texas. Microsoft has Recall. It won't ship with Copilot Plus PCs next week. Why the sudden pullback? And there's an Engadget article there.
Courtney?
Well, they decided rather than release it kind of as a system-wide beta, that they would release it to the insiders only first because it hasn't been tested in the wild yet. And there's so many questions about security, as with all AI that can be used for generative AI, especially that can be used for good and bad. Trying to figure out the guardrails on them has delayed a lot of AI products from the market because they're really afraid of how they could be used for evil. And until they figure out how they can lock it down or keep your significant other from browsing your entire history to discover things you don't want discovered, I'm not saying anything. But it's going to be problematic, especially for legal cases and so on. I think they want to shake it down first before they release it to the general public. So the insiders will have access to it. Not the Apple Insider, the Microsoft Insider program will have access to it if you have a Copilot Plus capable PC to test it out. And they'll take feedback from those people, and they will then make improvements on it and increase its security. So it's absolutely bulletproof.
Go, Jason.
Yeah, security researcher named Kevin Beaumont, who's been playing with this since the moment it was released, just absolutely ripped every one of their security claims apart. And it's actually more than that. They have finally recalled it so strongly that it's not going to be on by default, which with Microsoft is a big deal, you know. So, I mean, here's the transcript. Data's processed entirely locally in your laptop. Yes. It's cool, so hackers can't steal it, right? No, they can, but it's encrypted. Yeah, but when you log into the PC, it's not. The whole thing, just one by one, he just goes through the entirety of the claims that were made and just absolutely shows that you know, this is quite possibly the biggest undermining in Windows history, which is really saying a lot. So yeah, I'm glad they did that.
Yeah, I think this may be one of those things that they go, oh, we're going to do it in limited release, and then it'll quietly disappear. So go ahead, Courtney.
I got to remind Jason that anything security, anything is open to a security leak, since you have to be able to access it. It's like having write-only memory. You know, once you write to it, that's it. You can never read from it. That's kind of pointless. You know?
I think that one of the concerns that's kind of rolled out is that things that start off as a extra become a requirement. You know, I think that some people think that companies would then require you to keep this and make it available to them, that's in the remote work world. And so I think that that's be able to prove that you were doing whatever you said you were going to do on it. And I think that it's I think that the concerns that I heard anyway were less about security and more about 1984 like company policies. And I think I think it was one step too far for some folks. So I think that I think it's going to just, I don't know anything about it, but I think it'll just disappear. I think they're going to go back. They're going to say, we're going to test it for a while, and then somehow it just doesn't. We stop talking about it. It was a pretty big mistake. Now go ahead, Jason.
Yeah, I'm not trying to be sensationalist, but the moment I saw it, I'm like, this is a joke, right? Like, I mean, truly, just the most serious, like TiVoing your computer in a text file in a database that's just accessible. Like, no way.
Next question.
Next question is from Andy Kokendorfer from Viera Flora. Thoughts on the new OWC Express external drives?
Go ahead, Jason.
I had one day one, and I really like it. So what they've done is they made full use of Thunderbolt 4, and it allows for really, really great throughput. And in true to form, OWC is not requiring their own use of their own drives. You can buy this separately and put whatever you want in there. As Alex was showing the graphics, 3151 megabytes per second, real world performance, and it really does get that. And it's bus powered, and they did everything right. So yeah, I love it.
Yeah, it looks really great. I haven't gotten tested yet, but definitely interested in testing it. It looks like a great add-on. This could be a great one too. Now, it's only gonna. I mean, you're only gonna get those kind of speeds, I think, on the. I don't know what. Do you know what kind of speed you get?
Apple silicone hardware is really what it's designed for. So yes, you can do it on a PC, but good luck finding a fully compliant Thunderbolt 4.
But is it Thunderbolt? Does it only do Thunderbolt 4, or does it do?
No,
it should be backwards compatible to USB-C.
It is backwards compatible. So there are 3 different chipsets, right? 2 of which are backwards compatible, one of which is not.
And it's still the USB-C is still at 990 megabytes a second. a mere one gig per second.
This is USB 4 strictly, so it is sustained. The connection is 40 gigabits per second.
But I think that on their site they have it listed here as this is what they're what you're connected to here. USB-C. Right. When you go down to this, you get back down to the 1/3 the speed that you would get with I guess USB 4. So if you have a USB 4 here, and that's the question is I think for some of us is whether it is a good camera drive. Would this be a good one to attach to a camera?
I haven't done that yet. I'll give it a shot.
Yeah. Because it seems like it could be potentially a great one to put to connect to your camera to capture stuff. Yeah, go ahead, Alex.
Yeah, so I was just going to say on the Windows side of things, I haven't tested these, but I know a lot of people like the gigabyte PCIe Thunderbolt cards. These ones do Thunderbolt 3, and it says 40 gigabits per second bidirectional bandwidth there. So something like that. If you were trying to build a Windows PC, I would probably use this one because I believe my research here, a lot of people are using these in their own builds.
Yep. Next question.
Next question is from Gordon Lake in Los Angeles, California. Guy was in the Sony booth with the Sony BRC-AM7 PTZ camera with the function of the FR7, a 1080p mode, reach of 940 millimeters, and AI tracking. What box does this camera not check?
I guess I would say so. This is it looks like a great camera, by the way. This is the. It is a little bit smaller, so you can see this is I believe this is the FR7 that's there, and so this is a slightly smaller form factor here, 1-inch sensor, so a bit smaller than the full frame sensor that the FR7 has, but you still have a lot of good control of it, and so a lot of I/O on the back. So there is. I mean, I think they've basically kind of filled up the. Filled up with everything they could possibly put on the back of these cameras. They have a sync generator, and this is they've kind of built in the ability to use, of course, NDI, RTMP, SRT, but also be able to use it with green screen with virtual backgrounds. So I think that it's a huge. It looks really, really good. As far as I think the only thing it doesn't check for folks like me is the sensor size, which I care about. So, I think the sensor 1-inch sensor is great and better than a 2/3, which is what a lot of broadcast cameras are. So, they're stepping up for a corporate camera. I don't know what the price point is on it. I'm going to guess that it's about. I would guess that it's like $5,000, but I don't know for sure. It could be a little bit more, a little less. Does anyone know? Has anyone seen what the? What's it? This is the AM7 Sony. Let's just see if we have a retail price on it. Oh, 18. Well, James Haldane says $18,000 Canadian. Now, the 990 millimeters he was talking about is a 990 millimeter lens. So that there is an advantage there in the sense that it is and I just can't. Oh, there we go. B&H Photos has it available. Oh, it says coming soon. Notify me when ready. So it's brand new. But James says that it's $18,000. That could be it would be a good camera for, events where you're going to put the cameras in the back, and you need a long throw. I think that this could potentially be there because the FR7 will never really do that. I mean, you can put longer lenses on it and do a bunch of other things, but the FR7 wants to be within 25 feet of the subjects, which is usually where I try to put the camera. so I don't really track long throw cameras that much myself, but I think that. This one looks like it could be a great solution. It's a big jump up from the corporate. It does feel at 18,000 Canadian. It feels a little heavy. I think that the only thing that I'd be concerned about is really if I had to choose between this and the Canon 500, which is $5,000 and a 1-inch sensor, I'd have to think about that a little bit. So I just have to see what the price is and so on and so forth. But if it's over $10,000, I think that it's gonna. I'm not sure it has enough to compete with the Canon at $5,000. Next question.
Next question is from the QR code. Gene J. Anthony in Skokie, Illinois. What is Hirender and how do we use it? It's gotten a lot of excitement recently. Thanks.
Go, Courtney.
I don't know if this is what you're talking about. You didn't put a link in there, but Hirender, I think what you're talking about is these control systems, video servers designed for driving video walls and show control that interfaces. They have hardware. There's a 4RU that takes in a variety of different video signals from HDMI or SDI or DisplayPort and outputs them into another form. So it's kind of like a video wall processor. And they make a lot of different products here, different series for broadcast control software, multimedia central control software, professional and convenient media broadcast control software, Hirender Touch for kiosks, Macs. This is, I think, the engine they say on their website that was used to control all the giant video walls and the whole field in the Beijing Olympics. To control all those video screens. I think they had something to do with that. So it's a large media server that's designed for, and software, it's hardware and software that they have available for driving all that stuff to coordinate multiple media walls and broadcast control, as well as show controls, lighting, and other events, mechanical devices that have to move on cue, etc.
Next question.
Next question is from the QR code. We have Abby Beckert in Cairns, Australia. I just started as a theater tech. Can you recommend quick, practical, sustaining meals when a truck arrives before breakfast and the crew will struggle to load everything onto the stage in time for the evening performance?
Courtney.
Breakfast burritos. Usually there's
That's what I was going to say.
That's what when I was a stagehand, I used to be a stagehand and load those shows in, and it's no fun. And you'd get that early call in the morning before when you wouldn't normally be eating breakfast, but use a breakfast burrito. There's usually a food truck nearby because they know when those events are going to load in to serve the crews and do that if they're not supplying something on site for you. But breakfast burrito, or of course there's there's tons of energy bars and nutrition bars that you can carry on me, and that's what I carry on me until they change the packaging, which I now can't open anymore. That I always carry a couple of those in my pocket in case the producers are ignorant enough not to provide food for the crew there. That I will have something to sustain me and keep my sugar level up to a point where I can continue to work without passing out before I get a break to eat something. But
it's really, feeding the crew is a super important puzzle, and it's usually, I think we didn't take it nearly serious enough when I was first getting started, and we got much more serious about it as we kept on moving forward. Breakfast burritos are probably, in the United States at least, the most popular. I'm a big fan of breakfast burritos sans the potatoes. So I find that the potatoes slow the crew down. And Courtney agrees with me. So the potatoes are just filler. They're just, so you want more eggs and bacon and other goodness there. Too much salsa also is sometimes not a great thing. For performance. So I think breakfast burritos, lots of coffee, is usually a good thing to make sure that you have there. I think that even when you don't have a lot of money or time, investing the night before in crafty, as we call it here, and making sure that there's a nice table that has tea and coffee and the things that you'd want to put on it. Spend a little time on the tea and coffee table. There's something about it that makes it feel a lot better. And then wheeling into burritos for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. I mean, not all on the same day, but they're a pretty good go-to because you can just hand them to people. And oftentimes you can get, if you can take people's orders, it's even better. But otherwise, just get a smattering of them and get about 4 to 6 more than you need. You can put those in the fridge and use them later if you want to. But anyway, so I highly recommend that if you're backed into a corner. If you are the person doing the work and you don't have control over the crafty, as I assume when I show up that I'm going to have to feed myself the whole day. I don't have it like I'm going to have the luxury of doing anything. And so I'm happily surprised when there's food. But a lot of times I'm kind of picky during the day too. If you give me something that I think is going to be heavy, that's going to slow me down, I will tend not to eat it too. So I carry energy bars. My personal favorite is a bar called, I don't think it's available in Australia, called Jam Bars. They were given to us at the Toe the Wet Sprocket concert, and I got totally hooked on them, and now I buy them by the box. So I have a box of them usually, and I'll throw 3 or 4 or 5 of those into my bag. And I can go a whole day. I have different flavors and everything else, and I can go a whole day on about 4 of them. So I can't do that day after day after day, but I can get through the day. So if you're a person working on set, always assume that you're going to have to be self-sufficient. If you're a person hiring people to be on set, always assume that you need to feed everybody on time. Next question.
Next question's from the QR code. Peter Hunt in Knoxville, Tennessee. I have $1,200 to upgrade my home network. What would you recommend? I'm currently using my ISP router.
Go ahead, Alex.
Well, I think for about $500 US, since that's where you are, you can get a Ubiquiti Dream Machine. We've talked about that router many times, and that's a very, very capable router without breaking the bank. And unlike some certain enterprise routers, it doesn't require subscriptions for service, as far as I know, to utilize it properly. So that is what a lot of us are using. I'm not using a Dream Machine. I am using a Ubiquiti Edge router, which is, I believe, a step down, a little more affordable. And I'm really happy with it. So you got to think about, what are you going to be using on your network? If you're rebuilding things, if you are someone who edits video and you're going to build a super fast network attached storage device, maybe you want to look at something that's capable of doing 10G. You may want that bandwidth for fast transfers. Those are kind of the things that you want to think about.
Good, Courtney.
It depends on the size of your house and how much area you need to cover. I have a vertically oriented house, a multi-house, so it's easier for me a little bit for access points. I just put in Netgear, Nighthawks, which work good as access points. And I never use the cable company provided or router because you got to be careful, because if they provide Wi-Fi built into, I even have my own cable modem. So I just ditch their cable modem because they're going to charge you rent on that kind of thing. Even if they say they're providing it for free, it's built into your charge. I provide my own cable modem and interface and my own router because they have a sneaky thing that they do. Most of the cable systems that also provide Wi-Fi or connectivity for cell phone stuff is that they make a sub-channel available to the public out there using your router.
Comcast does.
Yes.
Comcast, what could possibly go wrong?
Yeah. So you'll find the public actually using your bandwidth because their routers actually divide off and talk to the real world out there and take in borders basically on your bandwidth. So that's why I always replace mine with my own local area nets and Wi-Fi routers.
What do you use as a modem?
I used I think a Netgear.
For the modem itself?
I can't remember. I see it here, but I don't see a brand name on it.
Yeah,
I can't remember.
I think the last one that I got was a Surf.
There's a Motorola. Yeah,
I get the surfboards, the Aris. This is the one that the last one that I bought. I don't know if this is the newest one, but it's the Aris surfboard SB8200 with DOCSIS 3.1, and it will, you do. What I will say is, if you have a third party modem, you need to restart it about once a month because it won't do any automatic updates to it. And so you'll notice that your bandwidth is slowing down a little bit. So I just get into the habit of the first day of the month, I just unplug it, wait 10 seconds, plug it back in, and you'll find that the performance is a lot better. It takes 2 minutes once a month, and it doesn't really be every month that they do it that way. But I've noticed when I'm suddenly realizing, like, I have one that should be 800 or 900 down, and then about 40 up, and I'll suddenly realize I'm in this like 200 or 300 range, and I'm trying to figure out what happened. And usually I find that unplugging the surfboard and plugging it back in fixes most of the problems. So they're constantly updating those things. Go ahead, Jason.
Yeah, Motorola Surfboard is a solid choice. There are a lot of reasons to switch out your that monolith thing that they give you for free every month. It is three things. It is a gateway, which means it takes cable and turns it into a single IP. It is a router, which means it takes that single IP and turns it into internal IPs. And then it's a wireless access point, which means it takes that and does it over Wi-Fi. It does none of those things well. It's kind of bad at all of them. More importantly, you're allowing your internet service provider to have insane access to the intranet, to the inside of your network, which is a pretty bad idea. Just remember that Comcast's full name is NBC Comcast Universal. They're a marketing company. They're not really an ISP.
Next question.
Next one's from Douglas Carmichael. Japan has passed an EU Digital Markets Act-like law opening up mobile platforms, app stores, and payment systems in that market. Thoughts?
Courtney?
Well, it's similar to what the EU is doing. Yeah, it's the availability to release the clutch of Apple on the exclusivity of marketing products on their platform, and others that may be doing that, that have totally vertical market. So it opens them up so that there can be other stores that do their own app checking and their own security and make apps available for the Apple platform and other platforms that may be little sealed walled gardens in some respect. So that one company doesn't have a monopoly on taking a percentage of every app maker's income. So I think it's going to spread. I think it's going to, more and more countries are going to look at doing this.
Go ahead, Alex.
My take is that all of this is driven by, just like kind of what Courtney alluded to there, is that this is driven by corporations that, want to be able to make more money. I don't think the average consumer has asked for more choice. I mean, more choice in theory can be good, but I think overall it's worse for the consumer. It makes the experience more bifurcated. There's more subscriptions you have to manage externally, and then you're dealing with somebody else's third-party security, and I just don't really want any of that. Personally, that's for me. Maybe some people want more choice. I just think in the end, it's just worse overall.
Yeah, I think as a Apple user, I think that 90% of Apple users don't even know this is happening and aren't really paying attention to it. Then there's about 5% that I think probably are really excited about it, and about another 5% that are really not excited about it. And I think that's pretty much it. Like, Apple users just want their phone to work. They don't really care about any of these things. And so again, I think that this is largely driven, as Alex alluded to, by large corporations that want to make more money. And so this is a aristocratic fight. This is a very rich company being challenged by other rich companies. It has nothing to do with users. It has no. This isn't. They can talk about it, but it has no real value to the average user. It will make it worse for the average user, because what happens. Here's the problem with this puzzle, is that what will start out as user choice will be taking away the user choice, because large companies like Facebook or Netflix or others may decide, well, we're only going to go on the outside of that, which means that I, as the Apple user, used to have this nice little garden that I was in, and now I have to go out into the street to go do something, because it was that. So that choice was actually taken from me, not given to me, but taken from me, because they take it out of the walled garden that I'm happy with. And what will happen, I think, is that, the other challenge really is that, trust is one of those things that is really difficult to manage. And as a small developer, I'm a small developer. I work on products mostly for corporations, but I'm working on a couple of products that will get released this year. I just want people to make it easy for people to buy things, and so. But I think that, again, I just don't think that most Apple users care. They don't care, and they don't care about the developers. They don't care about anyone else. They just want to open their phone and have it work. And if it gets more complicated, they'll be mad. And the thing is that what'll happen is that right now, I don't think anyone's going to use these. I mean, they're going to make these little app stores. So far, Google has these and no one uses them. They're like Google has. You can install a separate app store on Android right now. How many people are selling things successfully on Android? Nobody. Nobody's selling things successfully on Android. So the chances of the Android users are the more likely to do it, and they're not doing it. And I can guarantee that if you have any security problems on an external store, Apple will put it on the front page of everything. Like this is your fault. So the thing is that the chances of this really being successful, but the first large company that forces users to go outside of the App Store, like to truly get something that they want. I don't mean Epic, because the Epic's going to do whatever they're going to do. But you'll notice that I think Epic thought when Epic lost Fortnite they thought the whole world was going to go up, and Apple users were like, no, I guess we don't play that anymore. And so it wasn't nearly it kind of came to a thud. So I think it's really complicated for, and I just don't know if it'll really be successful, because I don't think that Apple users, again, some Apple users, Courtney's not an Apple user, so he cares a lot about it, but he'll never buy one. But I think if you look at actual Apple users, I don't think they care about this, and I think the chances of them using it are pretty low, especially because there'll be a lot of scaring that Apple will do related to this. And if you look at all of this privacy stuff and all the, you don't expect a lot of this stuff to work outside of the ecosystem. Yeah, go ahead, Courtney.
I do not have an iPhone, but I do have I have 3 MacBook Pros, a Mac Mini, and 2 iPads. So I do have Apple. But I compared this to what happened if you're old enough like me to remember the Carter phone decision. And back in the early 40s and 50s, the AT&T, of course, had dominated the phone networks in the United States, and they decided to and if you wanted to hook up an answering machine, then the answering machine came about. And if you wanted to hook up an answering machine or your own phone to the phone network, you were prevented from doing that. AT&T said you can only hook up our phones to the AT&T network, even though there's perfectly functional phones over there that work from independent manufacturers. But no, and so there was legislation called the Carter phone decision that opened up and dissolved that monopoly of AT&T so that you could use outside hardware and hook it up to the AT&T telephone network. So this is a similar type decision, legal decision that's going down to open up and break up that monopoly of hardware only or software only, in this case, use within a certain network. So I think this is very similar to that.
I think the interesting thing that wasn't, I don't think Apple made a big deal about it at WWDC, but I don't know what the truth is here, but watching the Apple keynote, I was like, I wonder if people on outside stores will be able to use all these new cool AI tools that Apple's building, and the answer is probably no. So like the thing is that like I think that Apple will not allow them to use the AI tools because they'll consider it a security risk, and they don't have to let them. I mean, they have to let them have a store. They don't have to interconnect. If you look at what Apple's doing with the Apple Trusted Cloud, and they're not going to give the secure enclave to the developers to
they have to let the developers develop and use it. Otherwise, they can't develop software even on the Apple platform.
No, they can't.
If they make the API available, then independent programmers should be able to use it.
We'll see. We'll see if they're going to say. I think they're going to argue that there's a security risk with AI to allow someone that's not doing all the Apple stuff to do that. So we'll see how that goes. Next question.
Next question is from the QR code. Barry Heathcliff in St. Paul, Minnesota asks, can you describe what is a pie hole and why would I want to use one?
Go ahead, Courtney.
To eat pie, of course. A pie hole is actually a blocker. It's a DNS blocker for keeping spam and annoying advertising off your computer. It's a Raspberry Pi that's configured as a DNS server to go between your computer and your router to process all the DNS requests. And it works with a whitelist or a blacklist. So that you can blacklist certain providers of advertising so that any requests from those advertisers or to those advertisers just get black-holed, which is the whole portion of the Pi hole because it uses a Raspberry Pi. It's sent to an address like 0000, 0.0.0.0, which is a non-routable address. So just basically those requests just disappear so you don't get the pop-up ads and so on. So it's kind of like an industrial strength pop-up blocker for your local area network.
Next question.
Zach Stallsmith in Chautauqua, New York asks, upgrading my setup and looking at purchasing the Blackmagic design ATEM Mini Pro ISO HDMI to capture content from multiple VCRs to digitize those tapes and using this to live stream a multicam setup. Pros and cons. It's sitting in my cart at the moment.
Jason?
My first thought is, how are you going to go from composite or component video to HDMI? Because really that's where your quality kind of variable is going to be. And I guarantee Courtney is going to have one, like just right sitting there. But there are a ton of ways to do this kind of conversion. And that's really going to determine your quality. And if you've got to drive fast enough, it'll certainly work.
Go ahead, Courtney.
I don't know if I'd use the ATEM Mini Pro ISO to capture content from multiple VCRs. If you have to switch between them, you're going to have to convert them to HDMI somehow. And there are a few things out here. I have this, which is a standalone recorder that has analog inputs and HDMI inputs and a USB output on it. And it records H.264 to a USB stick, but it also outputs HDMI. So you can take, here's a diagram in the back. So you can take your analog inputs from your VCRs, which is composite video, and the two audios into it, and it will convert the analog to digital and output it over HDMI. So then you could feed that into your ATEM switcher, and it'll also record locally H.264, and it does a pretty decent job. And some of them even have the ability to adjust the scan of the analog input, so you can adjust the aspect ratio a little bit or the positioning, because sometimes the overscan that used to happen in composite video signals would put part of the area off the screen, or it would sometimes put the you'd see those little lines at the top of the screen. Sometimes you'd see the line 20, 21, you'd see the closed captioning and things like that would be on the top, so you can kind of blow it up a little bit and get that stuff out of the frame when you're capturing.
Sorry, I got lost in my pages trying to prep for the next one. Jason.
Only two things to add to that. If your VCR has an S-video out, that's probably going to be a good thing. Just make sure you don't get any audio drift. And also, I've never used the ISO recordings as kind of my main recording. For me, it's just an easy way to stitch stuff together or to switch if I've had to live switch a show. The quality of your encoder here is like not a side thing. It is truly an important thing here. And I know you can turn the recording of the output up. I don't know how high you can turn the recording of the ISOs. So, if you are actually going to put in 8 and simultaneously record 8 feeds, the quality of that ISO recording is really going to determine your outcome.
Well, I think he's just doing the Mini Pro, so it'll be 4. But I think that it just depends on how important it is for you. The H.264 is probably going to be nearly the same quality as the VHS in the first place. But if you're going to have timing issues and all kinds of other things, so it'll be interesting to see. It's not going to be as simple as just connecting it, I don't think. Go ahead, Courtney.
Yeah, I'm not sure why he's doing 4 at once to digitize them. He says using a live stream to multicam setup. And I think he's just trying to do 4 at once. If he has 4 playback VCRs, just to increase the amount of time it takes to capture them all in. He's using the ATEM Mini as a means of monitoring them all and converting and recording them all. But the problem is it's going to record files, independent files, but they're all going to be locked together in a single session with a single record. So if one tape runs out, you need to replace it. And the others are still running, you're going to need to keep running that recording, that ISO recording. So you may run into problems like that if the tapes you're taping aren't all the same length. Yeah,
and I don't. If these are the records that you want to keep, I'm not that excited about the H.264 chips that are in the. I don't know if I'd want to use those as my compression tool. I don't think the compression on the ATEMs is great. I think it's fine for backups. It's fine for proxies. It's fine for those types of things. I'm not sure that I'm that excited about using their recorders. I think that I'd be more likely to use. They just dropped the price on their screen. Their video assists. I think the 5-inch is like. I want to say that the 5-inch is like $350 or something like that. It dropped a lot. I'd rather have a couple of those looking at them, maybe going back into that switcher, but I'd rather have a couple of those that are recording ProRes, like of those things, and not go through the
325 for the video.
Yeah, not recording. It would go through a lot of memory and it'd be a much larger file. But the issue is that you want to get it into a format that isn't so compressed, because you may have to do some color correction for it and so on and so forth. And you just want to start with that mezzanine. You may compress it into something after you've done that compression there, but it is coming through. Even though it's low quality, you don't want to make it worse quality, in my opinion. Next question.
Next question is from Talalik Lopez Waterman in Brevard, North Carolina. Do you think Parsec will ever make an iPadOS app?
Go ahead, Alex.
Yeah, I think that would be cool. I mean, I use Parsec. I think it's a very cool, very fast remote service, and it looks amazing, especially if you're into doing remote video editing. You can get really, really good quality results from that. An iPad app would be really cool. I don't know if they're going to make one, but if only Office Hours knew somebody at Parsec that we could bring on to talk to them about that.
That was a great second hour. One of our, I think we set a record for the most number of questions answered. Andy, if you go to the top 5 ever, Andy has about the top 4 of the most questions answered in 1 hour because Andy Carluccio answers them at a blazing rate. But Parsec, I think, is still number one. Like he did the number of questions that we were hammering them with. So if you go back and try to find it, it was really good. Parsec's really impressive. I'd be blown away if there was an iPad app. Next question.
Kyle Hammond in Chicago, Illinois asks, Guy was visiting the J5 Create booth yesterday, and they were showing their docking stations for Macs that would give more displays. Anyone have experience with these versus OWC or others?
I have to admit, most of the ones that I use are OWC. This one looks impressive. You've got the Thunderbolt outputs here. You've got Ethernet. You've got a bunch of standard A converter, A USB and that's on the back. Let's see if we can turn this over a little bit. In the front here, you can see this is the USB-C in. You've got headphones. You've got an SD card. So it looks impressive. I will admit that I'm highly resistant. I think it looks really nice. The problem that I really have is that I'm highly resistant to anything that curves. So any desktop thing that has a curve on it, I tend to lean away from. And the reason for that is I can't stack stuff on it. So if it curves, it's like this weird. So you'll find it very rare. I'll look at a lot of things out there, and I'll go, "Oh, that looks really good," and it's got a curved top on it. I'm like, I don't think I'm going to do that, because I can't put things on top of it. Maybe that's good. Maybe they do that on purpose so you don't do that because it needs heat or whatever. But I tend to lean away from anything with curves that might sit on my desk, because I generally, I have my, and this was a big factor in me getting, the KVM that I have. There's lots of KVMs, and most of them have buttons on top. Most of them are curved. Most of them are very styly, and I can't use any of them. I need it to be a box so that I can set my MixPre on top of it, which is what I have right now, and I can set it on top of other things. And so I think I'm a very square, loving person when it comes to putting things on my desk. But it looks like it has a lot of throughput. Go ahead, Jason.
I didn't have anything on that question. I was going to say, I use a little tripod. If I do have something that's odd that I want the MixPre to be on, I just use one of these DJI tripods.
There you go. Next question.
Tony Mobley in Noonan, Georgia asked, my house of worship setup is M1 Mac Mini, and the main device I use my MacBook Pro as a recorder for the Zoom service, and I have one iPad that is the Apple Music player and one iPad as an observer of the service based on what I've shared can Streamline.
Go, Jason.
My immediate thought is, what thing of those things can you free up by using hardware that would allow you to do other things? And my immediate thought there would be recording. I think this might be too expensive, but the HyperDeck Shuttle is kind of one of these unsung heroes of incredibly practical, incredibly useful, and kind of has these little secrets in it. So, for example, you can plug, I believe, HDMI in, and it will be a webcam for you. It can be a little teleprompter. You can put RTF files on it. And it really is. I have very expensive HyperDecks behind me, and I find that that's the one that I actually use. That's on my desk a lot. So yeah, that's my.
Yeah, I have a program. My program for this show goes through a HyperDeck, the shuttles right here, and so that I can anything that I have here that I can record, that I want to record, any of my screens. If I want to talk about something, do whatever, I can just hit record and record it as I go. So it's useful in that, and it will record ProRes as well as H.264. Next question.
Paul Waltz in Austin, Texas asks, Courtney, expound in depth on the most powerful beelink of all time, jankiness and all.
Courtney?
I don't know if it's the most powerful. I don't have this.
I just want to say that it used to be beelink by Courtney, but they've had a breakup. Yeah. Courtney no longer speaks for beelink. He's no longer a external unpaid, unconnected rep for beelink.
They never sent me anything. I used to like these beelinks. See, there they are, because they were small, they were fanless, and they were quiet. And then they started making them twice as high, and twice as noisy. And so I went to the Melees, which have the Melee Quieter 3s and Quieter 4s, which are perfectly good little mini PCs. This one that he's talking about, Beelink, went the other route. They got a lot more expensive. They went to taller, like I was showing here earlier. This is the one he was talking about, which is a Ryzen 7 and an AMD, built-in graphics processor. Yeah, it's okay. I think they make even more. I think they make a Ryzen 9 unit now that you can get, so it's even more expensive. These things cost. This one's currently unavailable, but I think they were around $500, $400, and $500. So they're about the price of a Mac Mini, a basic Mac Mini. Only they come with much more RAM, like 32 gigabytes, than your basic Mac Mini, which only comes with 8. And this comes with a 1 terabyte NVMe and a room for a second one, so that you could add another 4 terabytes or 6 terabytes of NVMe online. So it's quite capable. It's not a gaming machine because it doesn't support NVIDIA. You can hook up. It does have Thunderbolt, I think, on it. A couple of Thunderbolt ports, so you can use them for displays or display ports. They're USB-Cs, and I think you could hook it up an external Sonic box or something and put an NVIDIA card in there, and you can get NVIDIA drivers, of course, for Windows 11 Pro, which it comes with. So you can make it a pretty decent gaming machine with a little external hardware, but they're not available anymore. So, hey, look somewhere else. They do make Ryzen 9s, I think. And what is the other? I can't remember the name, but there's lots of small PC manufacturers that have adopted the same form factor, which is about 4 inches square and about 2.5 inches tall. So look around and you can find some pretty powerful machines that can mount on the back of your monitor.
Next question.
Jeff Veely in Henderson, Texas asks, I have 2 TVs connected to a MacStudio via HDMI to USB-C cables and 1 via HDMI. When powering on, often the TVs cannot find the Mac. Input is set correctly. Suggestions?
Jason?
Yeah, I think you've got a handshake problem here because whatever you're using for the input, whether it be USB-C directly into the TV or just a bad HDMI conversion, it's just not powering up because the Mac is having to figure stuff out in order to make an output. Best bang for your buck here is for $109. OWC has a Thunderbolt-powered thing that will give you 2 HDMI 4K with HDCP 2.0, Ethernet, gigabit Ethernet, and then 2 USB 2, and it's all powered without any external power. For $110, that may very well solve your problem.
Yeah, there's a couple different ways of managing this. It is probably that, and it's probably that all of them are coming up at the same time. So I think that you may find that if your monitors are up before your Mac, the Mac is trying to negotiate with the monitors as they're turning on. And I think that they're getting lost, as Jason said, in the Mac is very much like, hey, what do you want to do? And the monitors are like, what do you want to do? Or they're like, I'm still shuffling my papers as I get started up. And they're having a hard time finding each other there. So I think that you may find that number one is I would turn the monitors on first so that they're ready to go. Number 2 is, and these are usually not as expensive monitors that will be a little more touchy about this, especially if they're TVs. TVs tend to be a lot less robust when it comes to finding these things. And then the other thing you can do is you can lock the ED-ID. So what you want to do is you have a little box. I got one around here somewhere, and when it's working, you get it all working. You copy what is being given back to the Mac. And then you have it just run through that box all the time. That way, there's no handshake. It doesn't matter what's going on the other side. It just tells the Mac, this is what I want every single time, and it will come up and should be fine. I'll be honest with you, I don't have that problem, but most of my monitors are all going through. I have locked that ED-ID on I have a matrix, an 8x8 matrix that they all go into, and I locked what they're asking for. So when it goes out of my Mac, it goes into that first, and it knows what to do there. And I was corrected by David. It's the CEC and the HDCP handshake that is going back and forth there. Yeah, go ahead, Courtney.
Yeah, he didn't mention what brand TVs. I have a Vizio TV in the bedroom that has this problem. It's a bug. They updated the operating system to it, and then I have two things that hook up to it that use the CEC and HDMI inputs. And if you turn on, let's say, the external device first, and it uses CEC to turn on the TV, it'll come up, it'll turn on the TV, but it'll be blank. It won't see the input until you go to a different input and then come back to that input, and then it reinitializes the handshake, and then it'll show up. So you might have to, and it's a bug in their operating system of Vizio, which is now owned by, I think, Target, something like that. So you might have to go to a different input and come back to it to reinitialize it, or unplug the HDMI. Once everything is booted, unplug the HDMI and plug it back in. That reinitializes the EDIC and CEC, and then it might show up.
Next question.
This one's for me. I watched the General Magic documentary. Wow, was that ever compelling and heartbreaking? Definitely a cautionary tale for businesses. What did you learn from it?
What jumped out for you?
Well, for me, the most compelling thing for me was just like the sheer level of forward thinkingness and creativity. I mean, first of all, I had no idea that they even existed back then, and the fact that they came up with concepts for what was effectively a smartphone that was not all that far off from the concept of what we have now in our pockets. I thought that was incredible, but it's one of those things where, just watching Mark Peratt talk, who is kind of gave me some Steve Jobs vibes, a very smooth talker, sort of reality distortion feel that you could have. Well, unlike Steve Jobs, I think he was a very smooth talker, but ultimately had good vision, but they weren't able to carry through. The technology just wasn't there. And so it's one of those things where I think they just bit off more than they could chew with what was available at the time. They had great engineers. It's just that the technology wasn't there. The world wasn't really ready for it yet.
There's so much around products that just they're not there at the right time. I think we forget that products have to happen. A lot of products have to happen when all the environment is ready to be part of it. It's kind of like you drop a seed into something and there's no water, or there's no environment, or there's no whatever, and it just doesn't grow anywhere. And so all the pieces have to be there to make that actually happen. And so you'll see products all the time that occur and then die because the timing just wasn't right. And they were a great idea. And then they happen 20 years later, and you're like, well, why did that happen? And well, it's because all the other parts of the puzzle were available to make that actually made that actually happen. Go ahead, Courtney.
Yeah, I remember General Magic. In fact, I may have worked on some promotional stuff for them years ago. I know I may be confusing them with Magic Leap, because I remember doing internal stuff for Magic Leap, probably out of non-disclosure by now, about 10 or 15 years ago, that uses a lot of the technology that's now built into the headsets that reads your hand position and tracks individual fingers and so on. And it would do stuff in real time. You'd stick your hands up in front. It was a little module. It's about the size of a pack of gum that would sit right above your keyboard and watched your hands, and did amazing tracking stuff. But I don't think it ever came to market. The same thing with General Magic was kind of a leader in the Newton type PDA, a personal digital assistant. They had some problems, I think, with implementing touchscreens. I think they were trying to use resistive touchscreens at the time, before they discovered, or before the capacitive touchscreen was invented, and then everything changed. But yeah, like everyone said, a lot of innovation. They just couldn't get all the pieces to work together and to make a workable product that had sustainability and could be, lasted more than a month or two in the prototypes. And so they went by the wayside, spent a lot of money, had a lot of investor input on it. It was the darling of Silicon Valley for a while, but they never could come out with a product.
Next question.
Paul Wallace in Austin, Texas asks, guys, Cell Connect Pack worked perfectly, and Formula One Nigel piloted the cart. What a team. Is there anything they could have done more perfectly?
I'm afraid that during the day I wasn't able to see very much of it. I saw little pieces of it, and it looked amazing. So I think it was definitely an improvement. But hopefully, what we'll do is we'll get Guy and Nigel to come on and talk a little bit about it and show us hopefully we got some behind the scenes photos of what they had there. And we'll do a little breakdown. Maybe, I don't know if it'll be a whole second hour, but I think that we could do a question on it. Maybe Guy can throw a Cochrane next week and show us a little bit about what it actually took to put it together. We'd love to take a look at it there. Next question.
Francis Fry in Cambridge, Massachusetts asks, how much better is the video quality recording of an FX3 to an internal Sony, though SD versus an external drive?
I haven't. Oh, an extra. So it's a good question. So the FX3 can record fairly good footage internally, but what's going out the FX3 is a uncompressed. It's still 422, but it's an uncompressed signal that is coming from the sensor. So if you have a Ninja, or you have like an Atomos Ninja or something else on the outside, it's actually going to do better than the camera. So there are some of them that will. I believe the FX3 has a RAW output available to it, so you can have an external. I think it does RAW from the Sony RAW or whatever out of it, and there are a handful of video assists that can record that. So you could theoretically grab that. I don't think it will do that internally. And I don't, and I will admit that I lean towards external recorders. It's very rare for me to use the internal recording capacity of any camera. Usually I have drives on the outside or monitors on the outside or HyperDecks on the outside, but I very rarely use the internal capacity of the cameras. But I believe that you would actually have a higher quality higher quality record, and I'm not 100% sure of that, mostly because while I got some FX6s here and some other things, I record generally to the external drives and almost never to the internal ones, and that's largely driven by the fact that a lot of products don't record ProRes or RAW internally. So you get into the habit of not doing it because it didn't do it. I do record internally sometimes to the in a pinch to some of the Blackmagic cameras, but still the CFast cards that you put in and some of the internal memory cards are also very, very expensive. So if you're doing a lot of recording, it's cheaper to do it with an external drive with cheaper memory that's still effective. A guy put a link into the form of the unlock the raw power of Sony FX3 using the Atomos Ninja V, and you can do 16-bit RAW with the Atomos, and you can't do 16-bit RAW with the Sony internally. So I wouldn't look at it as necessarily an external drive, but an external monitor, and what you are looking for is something like a 16-bit RAW capability if you're looking for the highest quality. And then most of these, the Atomos, the Blackmagic ones will also record in ProRes, and you can record the ProRes. I don't think you're going to get a lot more quality. If you're doing ProRes, I don't think you're going to get a lot more quality using 444XQ. I think you probably want just the 422HQ is probably going to be all you would need to take out of that camera. If you're doing it at a Rec 709, potentially you would get a little bit out of it. I believe that the Atomos are also capable of recording in the PQ curve and HLG as well. Next question.
Next question is from Rian Smith in Trinidad, West Indies. Is Vimeo still you guys' lowest best platform to set up for pay-per-view events at like pubs, clubs, etc.?
I think it's the one that's the most popular. There are a couple others that are out there, a couple other services that are out there. Vimeo is the one that we generally see the most. It's got the most history of doing those things. So I would say so. Yep. Next question.
Next question is from Sam Greenwood in Toronto. What drove the decision not to cover WWDC in as much depth as in previous years?
Go ahead, Jason.
I mean, we're always trying things that are new and different, and the second year experience was designed, to just give you our reactions. WWDC is a deluge of information, and it always takes, very, very a ton of time to get through all of it. So, yeah, we're always trying, and producers decide what we answer.
Yeah, I think that one of the things, we were obviously really excited about WWDC, so we did do the second year experience that we had there. But I also think that, I will admit the largest rollout that we've had for a site coverage was NAB, and we're still recovering. so it basically, so that it's left us with a lot less. We got to figure that out a little bit. But both financially and energy wise, it just took up an incredible amount of resources on our end to pull it off. And so that was that's probably the biggest reason that we haven't done a lot of other coverage and probably won't until the fall. So anyway, so that was the decision process there. We're going to be talking about Macs next, and fixing them and selling them and distributing them here in just a second. Just a quick reminder, of course, that over the weekend we have Q&A tomorrow, and then introspection on Sunday, and it's usually a good internal conversation. So if you're wondering if you want to ask us questions about why we do what we do, or philosophical questions about the industry, things that we don't often spend as much time on during the week. Sundays are a great day for you to go ahead and jump in. You do have to be inside of Makana, so you have to go to officehours.global/join, get those emails starting to go, and you'll see links to Makana there. But it's a great Sunday conversation. It's one of my favorite conversations of the week, so hopefully we'll see you there. So there's a lot of us